Welcome into the Shopfix channel, a community joined together for the love of woodworking. My name is William Andre, and in today's episode, I want to show you how you can turn regular rough sawn walnut boards into these trapezoid desk or table legs. Stick around.
Shopfix. It's for the love of woodworking. I made quick work of flattening the walnut boards that are going to make up these modern legs by using my planer sled with a thickness planer. A planer sled works by giving a flat reference point to the board that you're milling up. And then if there's any gaps between the material of the planer sled and the board, all you have to do is wedge that and you're all set to go. It amazes me every time that simply by planing the board, these rough sawn walnut boards come out looking amazing. Now in this next step, we're going to flip that board over and use that flat reference side to get the other side flattened with our thickness planer, and we're going to set our turret stop to 3/4 to get a uniform thickness. Once we have that all completed, we can head over to the table saw to get a straight edge cut out with our joiner jig. And that's going to create not only a straight edge, but also cut off that live edge that we don't need anymore. I simply repeated that milling process for all of the walnut boards that are going to make up these modern legs. If you have any questions about the milling process that was shown in this video, comment below.
Alright, now that we have these boards properly milled up, we can go ahead and start cutting it to final width, and then we can begin to cut the angles out to create the trapezoid shape. Let's get started on that next step.
So for my design for these modern legs, I decided to rip all the boards at 3 inches. Now these legs have been designed to support at least a 2 foot by 4 foot surface. However, if you're going to be using a huge live edge slab for a large tabletop or something similar, you're going to have to beef up these legs by creating a thicker design or a wider design. For me, these legs will easily be able to support my 2 foot by 4 foot surface. If you have burn marks present on the edges of your boards, you can simply joint that off instead of having to sand it off at the end of your project. Now that we have all these walnut boards properly milled up, we can go ahead and arrange them in their trapezoid shape.
So these are the top of the legs and those are the bottom. So the base is wider than the top, and then these boards that are making up the top of the legs are going to be attached to the actual tabletop. And also the ends of these boards are going to be attached to the tabletop. Now you can create a template like this. It doesn't really matter what piece it is, it just needs to have a proper 10-degree angle. So I took this to the miter saw, cut 10-degree angles on both sides, and made sure that my measurement was 12 inches. So now I can place that in there, and that way I can get a really good idea of how these legs are going to come together. And this is important because you want to pick out the pieces where you want to place them within this trapezoid shape, and then you can start marking on the boards what angle you need to cut out. So all the angles on all the boards are going to be 10 degrees. However, they're going to be orientated differently depending on what boards need to be cut out. So I just took a pencil and I drew a straight line across these boards to indicate how I need to cut them out. So that way I have all the proper 10-degree angles. So once you have that, you can certainly arrange the boards and kind of make sure that you have the best face out, and make sure that you're cutting off any blemishes in the wood or just spots in the wood that you don't need, which I've done. I've kind of orientated and make sure that the excess wood is the wood that I don't want to keep to the legs. So I'm just cutting off what I think is the worst part of the wood. So that's kind of what I did, and I arranged this and planned it out. And you can certainly just take a pencil and mark on the edges of the board to actually indicate which piece goes where. If you want to do that, that's totally up to you. And so let's go ahead and start cutting these out on the miter saw.
The first cut that we need to make is simply to square up these boards on one side. However, we're going to be squaring them up by simply using the final 10-degree angle that we need for all these boards. Now once you lock your miter saw in at 10 degrees, you're going to want to leave it locked in until you get all the miter cuts done. Once you have one end of all of the walnut boards cut at 10 degrees, you can begin to measure for proper height. So your standard height for a table or desk is 28 to 30 inches, so that's exactly what I'll be measuring out here. Next, I use a stop block to lock in a measurement at 29 degrees to cut out the sides to all these trapezoid shapes. The final crosscut for these side pieces will be cut at another 10-degree angle. The stop block is actually pretty crucial for the project, as it makes sure that all the side pieces are going to be exactly the same measurement. With the side pieces cut out to their final crosscut length, we'll go ahead and cut the top pieces that'll make up these modern legs. These top pieces need to be cut out at a 12-inch length, and this design enables these legs to work with any 2-foot wide surface. So we have all the side pieces as well as the top pieces at their final crosscut length. Now we'll begin measuring out to get the final crosscut length for our bottom pieces to make up this trapezoid shape. Because all the other pieces are at their final crosscut length, this bottom piece will essentially enclose this whole trapezoid shape in its final form. So I wanted to make sure that I arranged all these boards in their final position and clamped them together, and then simply mark this to cut it to fit. Now let's go ahead and get this final crosscut done on this bottom piece to enclose the trapezoid shape. You can also apply a stop block to get an identical piece on your other trapezoid.
Well, now that we have cut all the 10-degree angles out on these boards, I was able to arrange them in their trapezoid shape, and they're fitting properly. And now the next thing we gotta do is glue them together.
Gluing these boards into their trapezoid shape was definitely one of the hardest parts of this project. To make this gluing process a little bit easier and to get a more accurate result when gluing this trapezoid shape together, I placed all of the walnut boards on flat sheets of MDF, and on the bottom piece and the top piece, I also clamped on flat sheets of MDF. I can tell you, without having these MDF panels as reference points for the boards, this was going to be a very difficult to nearly impossible figure to glue up. One important thing to note is that I actually saved my 10-degree cutoffs because I used them to clamp these boards up. So the boards are going down at a 10-degree angle, and if I try to apply pressure with the clamp on a 10-degree angle, the clamp just slips off. However, if I place a 10-degree cutoff and correct that angle back to 90 degrees, well, then I can use a clamp. To reinforce these glue joints that we just created, we're going to go ahead and use dowel rods. The first thing we need to do is measure out the location in which we're going to drill for the placement of the dowel rod. We'll be placing in 2 dowel rods per glue joint. With a piece of painter's tape applied to our 5/16 drill bit at 2 inches, we'll be able to go ahead and drill out an accurate hole for our dowel rod. Now I'm using a 5/16 inch drill bit to drill holes for a 5/16 inch diameter dowel. So I wouldn't recommend drilling anything wider than 5/16 inch when you're working with 3/4 inch thick wood, and this is because you have to freehand drill this hole, and if you're not perfectly in alignment, because the diameter of the hole isn't that wide, you'll be fine. Well, after coating your 5/16 inch wide dowel rod with wood glue, you can go ahead and hammer it in place. When using this dowel rod technique to strengthen your wood joints, you'll definitely want to clamp your board down because you do have to apply a lot of pressure to hammer these in. These 5/16 inch diameter dowels are made of pine wood. However, you could use a 5/16 inch oak dowel and it would be much stronger. After those dowel rods have had plenty of time to dry, we can go ahead and flush cut the ends of the dowels. After we have all of the dowel rods flush cut to the walnut boards, we can go ahead and take a chisel and chisel away any dry glue within the corner seams.
Well, we're getting really close to a final product here. We've placed our dowels into these walnut boards to reinforce the joints of these table or desk legs. We also took a chisel to chisel away some of the dry glue surrounding the seams of these joints. And now the only thing left to do is sand these legs and also stain or finish them with your preferred product. If you found this video extremely helpful in making modern desk or table legs for your project, don't forget to smash that like button and subscribe to the Shopfix channel. Well, I wish you the best of luck with your future woodworking projects. Take care.